Right, the discussion still continues here on Citizen Extra. MPs Peter Kaluma and Kimani Ichung'wah, and lawyers Steve Ogola, and of course James Devo is also a former magistrate. Thank you so much for staying with us. As we wind up now, still talking about IEBC and the way forward. Kimani Ichung'wah and Peter Kaluma and all of you, of course, are saying there should be investigations in IEBC and whoever should be found culpable should be punished. How do you reconcile a fact, sort of, I don't know if it's a fact yet because it hasn't happened, but if it happens, because you're not going to control how the investigations will be carried out. So what if these investigations touch on the highest officers in IEBC or the highest people in IEBC, yet we have, and they may end up with prosecutions, that we have only about 25 days to go to the election. It's a question ultimately of 30 days to the election. It's a question of separating the important from the urgent. Right now, the Constitution has said we must have an election within 60 days. The Supreme Court has gone ahead and confirmed that we must have an election within the next 60 days from their judgment. And we have gotten to a place as a nation that unless we do that, as Honorable Kaluma correctly points out, we'll be getting into uncharted waters. That will mean that the Constitution, as we have it now, that is very clear where we're supposed to go, will become fudged. And now everything will be open to interpretation. You've had Honorable Ichung'wah saying President Kenyatta continues. You've had Kaluma saying actually there will be no government. Now, what needs to happen is for the IEBC, in separating the important from the urgent, to say, look, it is urgent for us to finish this matter. That means we have to conduct this election. But what is important is not to lose sight of the fact that the investigations must continue to be ongoing, because the convictions don't have to be done within 45 days or 25 days. Those ones can be done within the next 1 year. Those who are culpable have to fall. Their heads have to roll. And that's the only way we'll inject integrity into the system. If people so it happens as the election is being... Yes, because Section 59 imputes personal responsibility on the election official who actually does something intentionally to subvert the process and to subvert the will of the people. So those people who, for example, who did not append a signature, that is something that is rudimentary. It is not brain surgery. It's not rocket science to imagine that that person was negligent or was being malicious. Those are people who should be under investigation, and as soon as the investigation is complete, should be in the dock. Those ones who, for example, who sent blank forms, we need to discover, was it out of malice, or was it insufficient training, or was it the kid was misbehaving and was trying to test it? Now, that investigation cannot be done and concluded within the next 25 days. Therefore, it's one of those things that must be ongoing, and it must take place before now the next general election. Okay. Because if you see how Kenyan jurisprudence has grown in election matters, from 1992, is with every election, we learn lessons. When we learn lessons, we take it to Parliament. Parliament passes laws to tighten those places, and we have to agree as Kenyans, we have actually seen incremental growth. It's not been going backwards. So for us to say that we cannot hold an election until we finish everything is actually hypocrisy, because we as a people have been growing in leaps and bounds with every election, and this election is no different. Okay. But in the next 60 days, we have to have an election, because getting to that precipice that Honorable Kaluma is describing is unthinkable and is not even in the interest of Kenya and the economy and the children of this nation who have to go for exams. It's one of those things where our leaders need to man up and say, you know what, in the interest of Kenyans, let's have this finality, let's have this ending. Honorable Kaluma, investigations may not necessarily mean you get prosecutions within the next 30 days. Correct. Or 15 days. So what do you mean when you now say, from the statement yesterday, the remarks yesterday, that investigations have to take place and prosecutions before you talk about this election?
The Supreme Court of Kenya has done a very good thing for this country. You know, the bar has been set, more so on matters integrity and credibility, very high. And we may lament about how high the bar is, but I want to remind our people that we set this bar for ourselves. In the Constitution, the Supreme Court never imported these requirements, other than the fact that the people of Kenya said this is how their elections ought to be. So I think we should begin socializing to agree to live under that new, constitutional dispensation. I said before, Hussein, that the tragedy with our debate and the debate I see in the media across Kenya, involving even the members of the public, is that we are prescribing legal solutions to a political problem. We should think of how we can prescribe a political solution to this legal problem. Because the legal problem is, the court has found that IBC has systemic and systematic lapses. When you talk of systemic, you are talking about the whole system, the whole institution. And that is why NASA is saying it lends credence to what we were proposing, that we need serious relook into IEBC in terms of its functions, personnel, the systems of technology applied and others. But remember, as NASA, we were cognizant, as Joy rightly says, that we still need an election in 60 days, as the court had ordered. That is why, though in terms of those culpabilities, and the Supreme Court now has confirmed in their majority decision, it would go as high as the head of IEBC, the chair himself. Deliberately, we were saying, let us pick this few and leave the others, because we need them to go through the elections. And if you look at how we were choosing who to go for, remember at IEBC, for instance, and it is now confirmed.
How he puts it is the question. Who to go for? The question is, on what basis? Because now you're talking about investigations.
The nature of the illegalities and irregularities.
So they should be investigated.
Because if you have the Supreme Court alluding to the fact that there was possibility of hacking, that's how we were saying Gulia should be dealt with as the commissioner in charge of ICT and the ICT directorate. And under Hussein, it is very commendable. You must be in the know now that the chair of IEBC, as the national returning officer, whom we are only sparing because the elections are coming so soon, you get what I mean, is already taking some actions. So what I would request of my friend is that look at the bare minimums NASA is prescribing. Those that are tenable within the context of these reasons now from the Supreme Court, let us deal with them.
Which shows that there were irregularities and illegalities in IBC.
Correct.
Okay, but this is also the Supreme Court saying, this also if you can read this, saying we are therefore unable to impute any criminal intent or culpability on either of the first or second respondent.
Yes.
That is the IBC or Chebukati. Or any other commissioner or member of the first respondent, that is IBC. The prayer for, therefore, is not allowed. Now, from that, it means, of course, they're not an investigative body.
Correct.
So it is an investigative body that is going to determine a culpability of those people that you want,
correct,
or otherwise,
correct,
of the people that you want removed from IEBC.
Certainly.
And that cannot happen
so
in 25
can that happen
days?
Remember that what we are dealing with is integrity and credibility. And that is why I was saying, look at the individuals we spoke about and how critical they were to adulterating the process. And let us agree on who goes and who can remain.
Hussein. Signed forms came from the field. They did not come from...
I'm not done.
Okay, finish your point.
I'm not done.
Finish.
What we are saying is very simple. Let us agree on who is culpable. If you are going to undertake investigations, I can tell you the Supreme Court judgment already gives us a basis.
Okay.
And a confirmation as to why this
let me make it very simple then, so that we listen to Shungwa. You're saying, let us agree on who is culpable. Who agrees? Is it investigations to determine who is culpable, or do you mean political players to agree?
Hussein, look at the court judgment. The illegalities and irregularities are already specified. The people behind them can be easily identified. If, for instance, you are saying a returning officer did not fill in the forms, you can easily, and it is for a specific constituency. I mean, why would you have difficulty identifying
determining who?
If you are saying there were extraneous entries into the server of IEBC, who is in charge of ICT, you pick him. That's what you are talking about.
Okay, let me get it.
You know, Hussein, at times the good thing with Mheshimiwa Kaluma is very honest. At times.
Not all the times.
When he's not suffering from undue influence from other quarters. And you heard him clearly tell us, we need to agree. And you've put the question right. Who agrees? And that is what now we should agree on. Who is it that agrees on who is culpable? One, the Supreme Court said they did not find anybody criminally culpable. Number two, if NASA had any iota of evidence that, say, a returning officer called Kimani Ichung'wah was criminally liable, it would have been much easier to have that in court, in the Supreme Court, adduce that evidence in their petition, and in their plaint, ask for prayers that the Supreme Court does stop Kimani Ichung'wah, returning officer for constituency
Not in an election petition.
Let me finish. Yeah. To be stopped from participating in the election. But I agree with him. The petition court may not have had the powers to do that. The Elections Act has all the provisions as to what action should be taken to
Election Offences Act.
The Election Offences Act. Officers, either IEBC or even any other person who would have interfered in any way with the election. And therefore, we can only get to that after an investigative process.
That can touch on anyone in the IEBC?
That can touch on anyone.
So,
but we should not preempt that investigation by seeking to politicize this matter and threatening officers selectively. You pick on Officer A, Officer B, and tell them you better run before we come for you.
Okay.
Because that is what we've been hearing, Hussein.
Yeah, from
Therefore, let us not say one thing from one end of the mouth and another from the other end of the mouth.
So my question to you, Ichung'wah, then, with 25 days to go to the October 17th date, you're talking about investigations that may touch on anyone, and they could go either way.
Yeah.
Do you think then we will have time? We are dealing with a matter that we don't know where to lead us, whether it will touch on the chairman of IBC, all the commissioners of IBC, the CEO of IBC, and we have an election in 25 days.
I think Joy put it very well when she was talking earlier. That one distinguished between what is important and urgent for now. Number two,
what is important and urgent?
What is important and urgent for us now? Which is to have an election within the next 30 or so days.
So would you have an election within 30 or 25 days with a commissioner,
over by criminals?
With a commission presided over by presided over by somebody who's suspected to have done.
You cannot even use the language Kaluma is using, presided over by criminals, because the court has said they have not found any criminal culpability. Therefore, we cannot have our cake and eat it as NASA wants. They want to have their cake and eat it at the same time. They want to agree with the court judgment in terms of nullifying the election results, but they also don't want to agree with the court in terms of not finding anyone criminally culpable. And therefore, let us allow those other independent offices who have been charged. Who says investigations cannot be done in 14 days or even 7 days?
Okay, so my question...
Who says you cannot find those who are criminally culpable? And Joy put it very well to you, that there are people who may have perpetuated illegalities or irregularities. And what investigators then will need to drill down to is, did you do that intentionally to subvert the will of the people? Or is it the case I'm telling you of what I've had from somebody that a presiding officer? Let me finish. What I told you I've had from somebody that a presiding officer wanted to do an experiment just to test the Kim's kit.
No, that was not an
transmitted a blank form.
It was not an experiment.
So, Honorable Ichung'wah, then my question, I'll come to you, Steve, briefly. You will be okay, because this is the nature of investigations. It could touch on anybody. You'll be okay to go into an election in 25 or 30 days, presided over by a commissioner who's actively being investigated of an illegality, and they just concluded in the annulled presidential election. You'll be okay with that?
Who say there's a commissioner being investigated?
I'm saying these are the nature of the... You're calling for investigations in IBC,
The nature of investigations that I'm saying we should look into. The illegalities, the irregularities, as they call them, where were they perpetuated? Were they perpetuated at the commission level or at the officers level? I would want us not to sacrifice people at the altar of political expediency or at the altar of political intimidation when we start telling officers holding high offices in IEBC, run before we come for you. I would want us to give an opportunity to investigative authorities to investigate particular cases. Let us go to Nyali. Let us go to Likoni. Let us drill down who is it that never appended his signature on a form.
That is
the
officer position.
Okay, you see, we'll always have different positions in this, the two seats. But let me get to I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Honorable Kaluma. Let me get to Ogola's.
Well, I'm just wondering, is it possible as a country to have a sober and dispassionate approach to this issue that is very important and central to our election? it would be unwise and injudicious for anybody, the ODPP or even IBC itself, to purport to commence investigation during the pendency of an electoral process.
Really?
Very unwise because we have 25 days. It can't be concluded in those 25 days. It only impugns the integrity of further, deepens the crisis.
Really?
Nothing can stop the ODPP.
So the law waits.
No, Mheshimiwa, what I'm saying is this. What we need is to innovate within the challenges that we have as a country. If we, in any case, Hussein, commencing investigations now, however desirable, is not conclusive in 25 days.
It won't be conclusive.
It won't be
Our
conclusive.
materials are ready.
Now, what I would if you're unable to, if you're
prosecution,
Mheshimiwa, if we are unable to negotiate an amicable political solution on that issue, I would like to invite IBC and let them not delay any further to activate the provisions of Article 163(6) to quickly move to the Supreme Court for an advisory opinion that, listen, we have tried everything that we can do to assure all the actors on the integrity of the electoral process, the purity of the process, and integrity, the preservation of the integrity of the vote. We have done what we can do. However, there are one or two pending issues. One of them includes people want certain, let's say, commissioners or maybe core staff at IBC to resign or to be sacked. And we are unable to make that decision now because of the timelines and because the nature, these are the people that also have the institutional memory in election management, and we have indicated, not devaluing those demands, but we've indicated how we are innovating within those challenges to deliver a free, fair, and credible election. The Supreme Court is duty-bound to give an advisory quickly. That will settle the issue. And I think if let IBC not waste much more time than it's already taken, because the political class will never agree on a shared on a shared vision. In terms of
that was actually going to be my next question as you wind up,
And over and beyond that, as we are in this season, we have to understand that for the common mwananchi, for them, they do not understand these intrigues that we're talking about. The principle that we have to remember is that somebody is supposed to be presumed innocent until they're proven guilty. And for state officials, there's a Fair Administrative Action Act that says they must be dealt with not just with the rules that are set in the book, but also in the rules of natural justice. They must be heard. It must be a process that is open. They must be able to defend themselves. So this is something that we did to ourselves when we removed the Isaac Hassan Commission. And I've said, when we allowed ourselves to use the politicians to negotiate a political settlement, to remove state officials, we set the precedent that when politicians are not happy with the referee, they can come together and decide to pick another one.
You don't think
that should not be allowed?
And you don't think that should be a solution to this problem now?
It should not be a solution.
Strictly legal.
We are sticking to the fidelity
So for the problem we have now should be legal, that's what you're saying.
So we go to elections within 60 days and we remove any officials according to the strict letter of the law. Because if right now I say Honorable Kaluma is a corrupt person, or Honorable Ishungwa, they, according to the law, according to the Integrity Act, they have to go to court to appeal any tribunal. Once they've exhausted all means and they've been adjudged guilty, that is only when I can activate Chapter 6 to remove them from office. Why then do we hold other state officers to a different standard?
Okay, as you
all
wind up,
Kenyans enjoy protection.
as a solution, she's proposing a solution. He was as a solution,
She has spoken very well. But let me remind ourselves of Section 56 of the Public Officers Ethics Act. The day you are charged in court, whether for public prosecution or private prosecution, you stand suspended from office. That is the wording of the law. You stand the day you are charged. And I'm telling you, we are not contemplating criminal prosecution just at the pace of the DPP. For us to say this thing is very serious. You know, we budgeted our own 42 billion. We will not accept any Kenyan who caused these elections to be bungled, to preside over any next elections. In fact, it would be foolhardy. And I think this politically we must agree to. Let us have a situation where we say, for once we are not going back because of circumstances. But as a country, we want to live according to the principles of good governance, integrity, which I spoke about. And we move this decision in that line. To me, everything the Supreme Court has prescribed is very doable with goodwill from IEBC and every Kenyan.
Okay. Kimani.
Let me say, Hussein, we're talking about political solutions or legal solutions. There's only one way out of this, and I agree with Joy, legal solutions. And on hindsight, I can tell you, and I have to live with this guilt for the rest of my life, that we went wrong in this country the moment we allowed political forces to force the Commission of Isaac Hassan out of office, using extra constitutional means, using extra legal means, and we should never, as a country, ever go back there. That is why we must insist, whether they want to do their own private prosecution, whether they want to give whatever evidence they have to the DPP, to allow due process of law to take place. And I want to ask, and I've put this question to my colleagues from the NASA side. What would happen today if we decided that as NASA, we have no faith in Chebukati or Chiloba, and therefore we will not trust him to adjudicate the next elections? What happens then when they go to the Supreme Court after we win these coming elections in October? Then we also decide Justice Maraga, by all means, looked very biased and looks like you're speaking for NASA. And therefore, we want him also to recuse himself, or even the majority from the Supreme Court. That is the problem. That is why we must respect institutions. We have put in place a Supreme Court that we have said, as much as we disagreed with the decision they made, we respect them as an institution, we respect the individual judges for all the positions they took, and we will comply with their orders to have elections in the next 60 days. What I would ask my colleagues is also to respect those institutions, respect other institutions, be it the office of the DPP, be it IEBC. Let us go into elections within the time that IEBC will independently put a date for us, whether it's the 17th or any other day.
Finally, Ogola.
I think, Hussein, because we must have the elections in the next few days, and we've already debated this for long, as a country. IBC should now share a short list of what is considered outstanding. And if NASA thinks that that list excludes something, or Jubilee thinks that that list does not include what they think is still outstanding, that short list, IBC must move to the Supreme Court to seek for an advice. I fear now for this country. Because you see now, there's an aggressive, listen, NASA has an aggressive posture. You get? Jubilee appears to me to have a very uncaring attitude, and the IBC is also lost in between.
We care for the rule of law.
IBC belongs to Jubilee.
No.
We're going back.
What I'm saying is this. The point I'm trying to underscore is this.
Can't go with
then the Supreme Court also.
The point I'm saying is,
in that case,
Hussein, let us prepare a short list of things that we consider contentious.
Who prepares that?
IBC under Article
Not political players.
No, under Article 163, sub-Article 6, IBC, the pathway, the door to the Supreme Court is open for advisory opinion. And IBC can wash its hands off this matter of key officers stepping aside, being sacked, and just say, listen, this is the manner in which we have innovated within our challenges to try and deal with this. But
that means, for example, even this meeting that they called off yesterday because of detailed judgment should not even take place.
They should call it quickly.
A meeting with NASA and Jubilee should not even take place.
No, they should call it. The more reason why now IBC must convene that meeting to have a shared and settled approach going to the election. And we want a press conference, NASA to the left, Jubilee to the right of IBC, and Chebukati Katikati, telling us this is the way forward for the country. We've listened to NASA, we've listened to Jubilee.
That is a way forward.
And these are the things that we've not agreed on. So we will transmit these questions to a judicial court, to the Supreme Court, for a final determination, and the Supreme Court will do so quickly. Just a ruling.
Thank you so much. That is Steve Ogola, is a lawyer. Jem Divo is also a lawyer and magistrate. MPs Peter Kaluma and Kimani Ichung'wah. Thank you all for making time for us. Worthwhile discussion it has been on Citizen Extra. Interesting days ahead. Very keen. It will be very interesting to see how all this unfolds. We're taking another short break. Brian, of course, will be back with News Trends.